Hi again. I'm glad that you tuned in. I'm sorry that it's been so long since I have posted a video, but I'm going to get right into it. I wanted to talk more about water and how it's more than just H2O. It actually stores energy, memory, and even responds to our emotions. We talked about the woman at the well, and I wanted to kind of go more like a more of a deep dive into what I think living water is in the scientific sense. Okay, so first of all, we learned through a bunch of work done by Dr. Gerry Pollack from the University of Washington, who found that water has a fourth phase beyond solid, which is ice, liquid, and gas. It actually can be more like a plasma, and it works to line blood vessels, and it creates almost like a slippery substance for blood to go through the body properly. But it also acts like a battery. It charge separates uh, the water in the cell so that we can actually store energy like a battery. And I'll get more into what charge separation is, but this easy water, turns out, is found in all of your cells, in your mitochondria, and the blood. And it's really essential for hydration overall and also cellular function. And it turns out that emotions and thoughts affect our physiology through this easy water at a cellular level. So remember, we talked about the woman at the well and who she was, a Samaritan, kind of rejected by the Jews, and then further rejected because of her history of many marriages and, all that. So likely she was feeling emotions of shame, rejection, condemnation, possibly even fear and frustration. So when Jesus was telling her, like, I know what you've been through and I know what you've done, and I'm here to tell you that you can actually approach God by worshiping in spirit and truth. Because she was like fretting over the fact that she had nowhere to go because their temple had been destroyed. So she couldn't even approach God. And Jesus was saying, okay, that whole phase is over. And he was like giving her a new framework, and it was giving her hope, and also he was accepting her, like he was saying, I've come here for you. And then that was giving her freedom. I mean, so much freedom that when she ran off in the story to tell the very people who had rejected her that she had met the Messiah at the well, she also forgot her jug of water. So, this was a liberating experience for her, and she went from living in like these negative, condemned emotions to ones of hope and joy and acceptance. So let's get back to what charge separation is, because it's really important. Like I said, it's how our cells, with that easy water, they are become like little batteries. So it refers to the process by which positive and negative charges are spatially separated, and that's what causes like an electric potential. So we need that electrical current to run through our body because, like we've talked about with light, it's our body, our biology is really pretty much electrical. And so, like, light affects us by giving frequencies, and then they cause like downstream responses electrically that then form our different hormones and different functions in our body. So this separation of charge is really critical for powering all of that. It powers our mitochondrial function. It powers the ATP, or the energy production, cell communication, detoxification, muscle contractions, even thoughts and perceptions are basically controlled by charge separation. And we know this from using like the EKGs or EEGs, on the brain and that kind of thing. And so the easy water is essential for keeping this charge separation in the cells. And it turns out that things like stress and any kind of negative emotion like shame, fear, all that stuff anger, resentment, anxiety. They trigger the sympathetic nervous system, which is the like a reaction, react and fight or flight, or figure out what to do because you're in danger. So your sympathetic nervous system is activated, and that leads to the downstream effects of things like cortisol and adrenaline, which are stress hormones. That, I mean, we need them, but we don't want them all the time pumping through, right? And this increases oxidative stress. And you've probably heard that because you want to take your antioxidants or eat your antioxidant foods. And so what that actually does is it leads to a shift in our pH. It alters blood flow away from, well, basically, instead of uh, to the parts of our body that would help us to like rest and digest, it moves it to the muscles, because when you're in fight or flight, it's time to run, right? And that pH shift, it reduces the structure of the easy water. So when the more the easy water is reduced, the less charge separation we have. So the in the cell, so then the less energy we have. Okay, so in that the chronic negative emotions end up actually reducing the amount of infrared that's emitted by the mitochondria, which we've kind of talked about before a little bit, but basically our cells will emit small bits of infrared light in order to help create this easy water. That's something that Gerry Pollack's work showed. So, um, you know, as much as the negative emotions can affect our our physiology, and also the flip side is that the positive emotions can restore that bioelectric flow. So one of the ways that negative emotions restrict the bioelectric flow is um, when they're stored in the body, they're stored in the part of our tissue called the fascia. And the fascia is what covers like our muscles and our organs and everything. So it keeps us all intact. So if that is always constricted, then basically we have less oxygen and nutrients that can flow through that, because it's holding on, and it actually impairs the electric effect, and that's what contributes to lack of energy. So you'll notice, like, if you ever go through a really stressful time, and or maybe you're angry or fearful or whatever, that you feel tired. It makes you really tired. Well, that's why, because all that stuff is constricting the fascia, and that fascia is not able to let things flow through your body, so you're being robbed of energy. So, since the flip side is that positive emotions can restore that bioelectric flow, what kinds of positive emotions? Well, all of them, but basically, probably the biggest one is gratitude. Like, you can't be really thankful at the same time as being angry. It's really hard to, I mean, I've not been able to do that. Maybe you can. But things like love and even awe. Like, have you noticed, if you just take a day and you go for a walk or go to the beach and you just start observing nature and you're in awe of nature, how your whole the feelings of stress or anything, they just go away, right? Well, that's because those feelings actually create like this safe and parasympathetic state, to where your body is like safe to rest. And when you're in that safe to rest state, then your mitochondria can produce that energy, and it actually expands that easy water in your cells. And so it creates more energy. So basically, your positive emotions literally energize your body by optimizing that charge separation. When your mind and your body and your spirit are in harmony, this leads to like better hydration and cellular function overall. So I know that I've mentioned this before, but I think one of the biggest things that we can do to help restore that harmony in our body and our spirit and our mind is to practice forgiveness. So like, sometimes people do terrible things. I mean, and we do terrible things. And sometimes we have to forgive ourselves. But when we are actively in a state of being quick to forgive, then we will have less downtime. Like our body will respond positively because we're going to be in that rest state. I mean, have you ever noticed when you're mad at somebody or you're just, frustrated or whatever, that you can't really rest very well? I think that's why scripture says, don't go to sleep angry. It says to resolve things before you go to bed, because you really don't rest when you can't forgive. And so I'm going to keep hammering on that one because I know for me, it's been like the biggest, most important piece of my health journey. So, um, the other ways that you can cultivate living water is to get that sunlight that we've talked about, because it turns out, especially the red and the infrared lights, or those wavelengths, they, anytime your skin is exposed, your cells basically are charged, and they expand that easy water. So it's the light, the red light and the infrared light that expand that easy water. um, but what can happen is, like, if you get all your daylight exposure and you're doing great on that, you get that sunrise exposure and everything. But then at night, if you're using artificial light, especially blue light, it shrinks that exclusion zone water. That easy water gets to shrink, and now you basically are back to ground zero. So you really want to figure out ways that you can maybe change out some light bulbs instead of the high blue LEDs. You could possibly find some amber colored ones or something that you can still see pretty well with them. I mean, it's even better to get incandescents because they don't have flicker. And we'll get more into that, but flicker basically messes with your brain waves. So, so you want less flicker as well. But if you can get amber or red, especially incandescents, and replace some of those bulbs at night so that you get that balance. Because, in nature, there's never just like one light spectrum. In nature, there's all the light spectrums. So you want to try to emulate that, and especially at night, so that you don't shrink that easy water. And then the other thing that disrupts charge separation in water is man-made EMFs. So that would be your cell phone, your laptop, your iPad, all those things, your smart this and your smart that. And we've talked about that before, but it specifically disrupts charge separation. So it's going to also shrink that easy water. But one way you can counteract that, and we've touched on this before, is grounding or being barefoot on the earth. You don't want to be holding your cell phone while you do that, because it's like you're just bringing that current through your body. But when you ground to the earth, you basically improve both the charge and the cell hydration. You increase that easy water. And then the last one that I think would be important would be to drink really high quality water that is has electrolytes in it. So either naturally, because it's spring water. I mean, spring water is best. If you can, there's a website called Find a Spring, and you can look on there, and there might even be a spring in your neighborhood that you could basically just go get free water from. There is one I know near Seattle, which is cool. But that's the best water you can drink, because it's already going to have natural electrolytes in it, and it also is going to be structured. Because we haven't really talked much about this, but there was a bunch of research done by I think his name was Nimoto or something like that, a Japanese scientist, and he was looking at how different words and emotional words, like saying love, affected the structure of water. So he was like taking pictures of ice crystals, and he would say something mean to the water and then freeze it, and there would be like this incoherent kind of ugly pattern made. But then he would say I love you or something to the water and freeze it, and it would be like these beautiful crystal perfect patterns. You can look that up. It's kind of interesting. But it turns out that our body needs the structure in the water, which I mean, basically, water does have a structure to it in nature, and it needs that in order to help form that easy water. So you can actually structure water by placing it in glass, preferably blue glass, and then putting it in sunlight for about like, this is 32 ounces. I put it out for like 3 hours. If it's a super cloudy day, I might put it out for 4 or 5. But that is like a cheap and easy way to structure water. There's also things like Analemma has a device that you can use for structuring water, or you can just stir it. Like if you stir it with a little bit of salt, and you if you have um, like a filtration system so that you're getting things like chlorine and fluoride out of the water, that I would recommend that. But you want to put some of the electrolytes back in, so you're going to want to put maybe a little bit of sea salt and then a little bit of lemon or something like that. And then when you stir the water with those in it, it will actually start to restructure again. And the other thing that's really helpful for the water structure in our bodies that helps that easy water is just eating fruits and vegetables that are in their whole form, especially raw, because they naturally have that easy water in them. Because, like us, they need that kind of hydrophilic layer, because you know how osmosis works with the chlorophyll. Well, our blood is like the iron. It's the same as chlorophyll, except we're with iron, and the plants, the chlorophyll is or yeah, the chlorophyll is with magnesium, and our blood is with iron. But basically, it's the same thing. It's how we get nutrients in and toxins out. So the plants, they're going to naturally have structured water. So if we eat them, we will get that as well. So anyway, I'm really glad you tuned in. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I know it's kind of long and choppy and it's been a while. I really would appreciate it if you do like any of the information that I'm giving you, that you would like this video and share it with other people. And God bless you. And, just keep thinking, am I hydrating myself, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually as well. And we'll see you next time.